Welcome, everybody. It's great to have everybody join us today for another webinar in the Sparx Global webinar series. And today we're looking at cloud architecture modeling using Enterprise Architect. For those of you that have not heard me before, my name's Scott Hebbard. I'm the Communications Manager at Sparx Systems. I'm very pleased to be joined today by Nizam Mohammed. Now, Nizam I've known for a number of years. He's been an EA consultant for over 15 years, and he is our ProLaborate product manager. He has a vast expertise in using Enterprise Architect, ProLaborate, the Pro Cloud Server, and we're very pleased to have him here today to talk about cloud architecture modeling using Enterprise Architect. And I value his expertise and his great deal of experience working with customers from all around the world in this area. So welcome, Nizam. Great to have you with us today. The agenda for today's session, I'm going to talk about how to submit questions. I'm then going to hand over to Nizam that's going to start our cloud architecture presentation. And at the end of the session, we'll have Q&A where we'll be able to respond to some of your questions. Please note that audio is muted for all participants. You'll be able to type questions to the host. It'll come through to me. And if we can't answer all questions live, we'll follow up offline. And typically, the webinars are available, made available on the Sparx Systems website, sparxsystems.com. And we also make these videos available on our Sparx Systems YouTube site. So if you just use Google and look up Sparx Systems YouTube, there are hundreds of free webinars that you can review and look at to find out more about Enterprise Architect, ProLaborate, and the Pro Cloud Server. And we encourage you to take a look at both the Sparx Systems website and the Sparx Systems YouTube site. Simply enter the text into the text box and hit send or hit enter on the numeric keypad, and that'll come through to me as the host. But right now, I'd like to hand over to our presenter, Nizam, who's going to step through the presentation today. So welcome, Nizam, and I look forward to hearing about cloud architecture modeling using Enterprise Architect. And I can see your screen and it looks great. So thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon for people joining us from different parts of the world. This is Nizam, and as Scott mentioned, I am the product manager for the Sparx Systems ProLaborate division, but I've also been with Sparx Systems as a consultant for the last 15 odd years. And today we'll be talking about the icon sets or the image library that is available in Enterprise Architect to do the cloud infrastructure modeling, but we will be taking practical implementation perspective to see what are the nuances that we need to take into consideration to extend this image library into something that is more concrete, that represents the actual infrastructure. And we'll be seeing how I can even push that further to kind of make some automated cloud deployment. So we are talking about a couple of steps that are involved in taking these icon sets and converting into something that is representational of our deployment architecture in a very concrete manner, so much so that we can even automatically instantiate cloud instances and deploy. And what makes me a right person to talk about it, I also, on top of being an EA consultant and ProLaborate person, I manage the cloud deployment aspect of Sparx EA platform as well. So as you may all know, we can you can avail the entire Sparx EA infrastructure hosted and managed in cloud, and I kind of manage and operate that team. So we have this model-driven approach in our team, and that's exactly what I have used to explain. So it sometimes parts of this webinar will get a little technical, we'll dive into a lot of details, but I kind of intended to make it that way so that people would know that it's something full comprehensive and not just drawing something. So that's what we'll be seeing in this webinar. I've laid out the agenda for today as a quick introduction to the wonderful icon sets that we are seeing in Enterprise Architect now, and add to this the custom diagrams, the highly appealing kind of rendering that were introduced in the recent versions of EA. All this together gives us a really good drawing tool as well. Like in the past, we have always seen rift between the Visio kind of a diagrams versus a technical architecture diagram. But the recent advancements in the way it's rendered, the way it's more flat and contemporary, and the use of these icon sets will give us everything that we need to create a well-defined architecture diagram using EA itself. So that's what we'll be starting with. And then we'll be seeing how to extend these icon sets into something that fits into an architectural meta model or an architectural profile. Like when we talk about an architectural profile, we're talking about this being part of the business application information and technology layers that we model, and the technology stack that we model kind of is a true reflection of what is being deployed. Like the instance type, the databases, the OSs, the availability zones, and all those things that needs to be taken into consideration when we are really delivering something as a deployment model. So we'll see that, and then we'll be looking at how to combine this profile definitions and icon sets together into some reusable patterns, so you could kind of simplify creating these um, architectural diagrams rather than trying to create everything from scratch. So that's something that we'll see. And then finally, there are multiple aspects in cloud or infrastructure modeling, or in any modeling for instance. So we'll be seeing how we can have different teams work with us to complete this model. And then as a last thing, we'll see how this created model can be used to even automate a few of these deployments. So that's what is the agenda for today. We'll take a step-by-step view of each of these, starting with the icon sets in EA. So starting EA15, we started to add a variety of icon library. Started with AWS, and the recent 15.2 supports a complete suite of icons from the Google Cloud and Microsoft's Azure, so that it gives us something that is, we can create a diagram that is almost similar to something that we create in an AWS tool. So there are drawing tools in AWS supported architecture drawing tools, where you have all the image set and icons to create a deployment diagram. We can create something very similar using EA, at the same time linking it to the application stack and the business layers and the information layer that we have. So that's where this icon library in EA is so very special, or in an architecture tool is very special. And what we have to take into account is that there are three new MDG technologies, how we call it in EA, which enables these icon sets. So there is this Amazon Web Services, the Google Cloud Platform, and the Azure Cloud and AI. So these are the three new MDG technologies that one has to enable to avail these icons in EA. So these architecture icons are, as I said, the actual representations that each of these vendors or these service providers use to kind of model their deployments, and it's fully recreated and available for all the users to use without any copyrights or any concerns on copyrights of using these images. So you have the Azure library and the Google Cloud library, and there are also some very easy to use patterns available out of the box as well. So these three things on an outset may sound just like an image available, but over this webinar you'll see how powerful this could eventually become. So what I'm going to do now is quickly open EA and show you a quick demo of how to create a simple diagram. So I'm mentioning this word diagram because at the moment I'm just going to do a diagram. I'm not going to model an architecture yet, but how to create a diagram using these image sets and how to kind of include these images into my model. So to start with, I'm going to open my enterprise architect repository. And what I'm going to do is work backwards. Let me first start what a diagram in EA will look like when I use these icon sets. So I'm going to start with a new package in which I'm going to say a new cloud deployment and create a diagram for it. In that diagram, you can see that there's an AWS, the Google, and the Azure MDGs being added now. And I'm going to use the AWS to create a AWS diagram. And in this, I'll see a set of predefined, like in the toolbox, you could see that these are all the representations that we would expect when we want to model an AWS deployment, like the AWS cloud, within which we may want to have the regions in which we are going to host or deploy something, within which we may want the VPC, and then we may need the availability zones in it. So you could see that it's all there. If you look at an AWS diagram, this is pretty much what we expect to model. So we have the availability zones, and then we can have the private subnet or the public subnets. And within the private or public subnets, we can start modeling the instances, which could be EC2 instance, or it could be RDS instance, like a application server or a DB server. So you could see that these icon image library or the toolboxes are automatically rendering the images in the right way. But then there are some prerequisites before getting into this point, which I will show you in a moment. But I just want to complete this diagram by adding a component that kind of represents, or maybe not a component, maybe a node that represents an EC2 server in this particular deployment. An EC2 server is the application server of AWS, as most of you may know. And let's say if I call this my application server, now you may think this looks like a normal UML device. That's right. This is a normal UML device. But what what will make it different now is the icon sets that are available now. So in AWS, you could have a T3, T2, T1 nodes, or a memory optimized nodes, or a performance optimized nodes. So there are a variety of nodes. So let me say I want to model this app server using a T3 instance. I'm just searching for T3, and if I find it in the project browser, you could see that there is this image library that EA has included, which has all these different types of instances that AWS supports. So this, you could have the memory optimized or the performance optimized or any different types of nodes that are in the AWS catalog is available as an icon for us. And what I have to do is, let's say if I want to model it as a T3 instance, I can just drag and drop this on top of my application server and say, make this as the T3 node. Sorry, I think I just chose the wrong option. I have to apply on this set as alternate image. So this now becomes the T3 server. The second option that I used, which I'll do now, is to create a new object. But I have converted the node into a T3 server, which represents pictorially that it's a T3 server, but in the architecture repository, it's a node. So we can have the properties, the metadata associated with it, including the name, the nodes, and the additional tags that we may want to add. So as you could see, the combination of UML or the modeling support in EA and these icon sets helps us create something that's very presentable, at the same time stick to the modeling paradigm that we always ought to do using EA. So there is a reason that we do things in EA instead of Visio, and now this kind of combines both and gives us the best of both worlds. So I'll just repeat how I did the T3 instance. So let's say I want to create a database server. I can just I can say there's a maybe a R4 instance I want to create as a DB server. I'm dragging and dropping this, and I'm saying create an element with this as an image. So these are the new modeling support that were added in EA in the 14.5s and things like that. If you haven't seen it, it's worth considering how to create or how to um, have an image library in your model and use that to create your diagrams. And this diagram type is also a custom style diagram, which makes it even more slick and flat rather than looking at a technical diagram. So there's a lot of new features since 14.5, I think, which makes this kind of rendering possible. So for now, what I'm going to say is I'm going to model this as a device, but instead of adding it as a normal UML-ish sort of a look and feel, I'm modeling it as a R4 instance, which represents the AWS node type that I'm going to use. So you can see that I use the toolbox to create a few things which renders these images in the right way. But as I said, to to do something like this, there are a few prerequisites, because if you just start a new EA project or a EA model and try to do this, you will not see these image sets included. So there's a step that you need to do, which is you need to import these image assets for AWS and Google or Azure into your repository to make this possible. And how do I do that? So if I go and say add models using Wizard, and I go and choose just the analysis types, just for convenience, you'll see the AWS, Google, and Azure related patterns, and in each of these you will see the image library. So we have the Google image library, the Azure image library, and the AWS image library. So there are multiple releases as well, so there's an updated version or there's a previous version depending on which version of AWS you are trying to model. And then if I want to add something to my catalog, to my repository, so that I can start using like how I did now, I just have to go and say create these patterns. And what EA will allow me to do is to import this. So I'm just saving those diagrams, and it will ask if I can import these icons into my EA catalog, so that these are the entire set of icons that are available for me to import but for the purpose of best interest of time, I'm just selecting one package and importing. And for most of you who might have used these patterns and predefined templates, it is very similar to what you have done in the past, but this just adds these image libraries, image assets into my model, so that I can start using it in the diagrams as and when I need. So I've just added that into my model. As you can see, there's the database services that I just added, and that gives me all the icons that are commonly used in an Azure model. Okay, so that's adding these to my library. This is once, and then after that I'll be able to just create my diagram and reuse them any number of times. So this image library is advanced feature. It's not like an alternate image. This is more a model where it's reused. So you could create these images once and reuse them across multiple objects, and if you update the image, all these objects gets updated. So it's, if you haven't seen it already, I would request you to please take a look at how to use these image assets in EA. So this is one option where I went and created all these manually, but you can also see that there are some predefined patterns that is given along with these MDGs. For example, there's this AWS services example 1 or example 2, which kind of depicts different common scenarios. And if you want to start with something, you could just use these patterns and start. So I am saying this AWS Web Services example 4, and you could even see what is available, and then say just create this pattern into my diagram, and you could see that it will create the diagram, and all the layouts. So this cloud, the availability zones, VPCs, private subnets, whatever I created manually can now be is now being created through the patterns. So I have this full-fledged diagram automatically created for me, and then I go change them. Okay, so these patterns are quite in quite useful, which avoids a lot of manual work that I did previously. So to create a very similar diagram, I have to do one by one myself. So these patterns are quite useful as well. So by the way of introducing icon sets, that's where that's what I wanted to show. However, as I said, this is just a beginning to the technology stack modeling that we are going to see. So first thing is like introduction to these icon sets, and I'm sure you would have got a hang of what these are. But then what I'm going to do now is these icon sets are great. You know, if you just want to give a pictorial representation of this, these icon sets are great. You can create these diagrams in a jiffy, and then you can publish them. So, but are these sufficient? Are these enough to convey the architectural information that we want? So I've just taken an example deployment that we have, and I'm going to show different levels of abstraction that are involved for the same deployment. Okay, so here I'm having the typical EA platform deployment that we use, where there is enterprise architected client at the client end user side, and then there is this web browsers for accessing the ProLaborate application, and then everything else is in our AWS cloud. So this is the most simplified version of a deployment that we want to do. But if I dive deeper on this, if I just start taking the next step on the integrations, that kind of becomes a little more complicated because it's a lot of components involved in it. There is application servers, there's database servers, there is ports, there's firewalls, and all those things. So it's not always as simple as this. If it is always as simple as this, an image library is excellent. But this is not the actual architecture that represents the fullest picture. So so this is to show that that is kind of broken into a slightly technical view in this. But then this again, this only talks about one aspects of it. It's only about the applications and its integrations. If I take a even deeper look into actual AWS representation of this deployment, it's a simple ProLaborate application and EA application deployment on cloud. It's on an outside, it sounds very simple, but if you just dig deeper, you could see that it opens a plethora of things that needs to be taken into account. So the moment I step into an AWS deployment, my cloud team will come and ask me for all these details. What type of EC2 servers do you need? What type of VPCs do you need to configure? Is it a private subnet, public subnet? So I need to give them all the details to make sure the deployment or the actual setup goes the way we want. So I'm just zooming into this EC2 server. So this is a meta model view. Okay, I'm not saying this is the final representation. This is a meta model view where I'm saying an EC2 server in the bare minimum should have a set of alarms configured, should have a predefined machine image that I'm connecting that to, should have security groups configured, should have the type of instances, should have the reservation capacity. So there are quite a few parameters that my cloud team will come back to me and ask, how do I go about it? So I need to model them. I can't just give them a picture and send them an email and say, go do this. That's absolutely not adding up to a model-based approach. So I need to have this kind of details, and just zooming further, a security group that I am going to refer in my EC2 server will have ports, protocols, and types. And so EBS volume will have its own encryption. So every single component that we are going to use in my architecture diagram will have a detailed set of attributes or metadata associated with it. Even if I take to the very simple application, a ProLaborate application or a ProCloud Server application, that in itself will have a variety of options. Is it configured in IIS or using the default web service, or does it have a floating license configuration enabled or disabled? So there's always questions in every single bits and pieces that we want to deploy, and we need to make them all very clear in our model. And this is why we need an extended profile or something that is well. So I'm just trying to draw an analogy from this to whatever you are doing. So if you are deploying your core applications and your supporting applications or your OSS applications on cloud, you need to provide much more than the kind of details that we are looking at this screen. And for that, we definitely need to extend and create a standardized MDG. I mean, this is what we usually recommend. Create a standardized MDG that can be used by your architects to model all these. Okay, so going along those lines, we have created a like the our team specific MDG, which has all the components that we would intend to use in our AWS modeling. Like I said, EC2 server, uh, the security groups, volumes, and applications. Each of these have been converted into a proper toolbox item with all the tagged values and stereotypes defined. And this is what we are using in our models. So if I quickly switch back to my EA and show a quick demo of this, it'll kind of give you a idea of what I'm talking about. So instead of starting with an AWS diagram, I'm going to start with, let's say, a set of supporting components. So, and in the supporting components, instead of using the AWS diagram, I'm going to go and use the 6FS or my custom MDG based uh, tool set. So when I say 6FS AWS diagram, you could see that I have a whole set of the EC2 servers and applications and regions, but configured according to my meta model. So this is different from the EC2 server that we saw previously, where there was a pictorial representation of a T3 instance. But here I'm talking about an EC2 server out of the box has all the details that I want to see in it, like the EC2 usage type. So is it a burstable or a general purpose instance, or reservation capacity, security groups associated to it, what kind of environment is it? Am I going to create a prod environment or a UAT environment? So all these details, the nuances that we need in our architecture model are generally are the attributes that we need to standardize on these. So I've created a custom MDG which has all the attributes that are required for my cloud deployment team to take and work on it. Now you might wonder, I just started with a flashy, very good looking icon set based diagram, and now I'm kind of coming back to the same old technical UML component. So where am I trying to take this? What I'm going to do now is, or what I'm going to show you now is, once this MDG is defined, then we combine these elements with the icon sets to create the kind of models that we want to do. So if I expand into my AWS patterns that we have created, so you could see that these are some of the standard deployments that we do. And what we have done is, if I take EA on cloud, so if if we are hosting enterprise architect repositories on cloud and just giving a HTTPS connection to our clients, and they don't care about all the infrastructure that goes with it, that's what we call as EA on cloud. And to model something like that, I need a similar representation. So you can see that this is very similar to what I did in the first place. However, instead of using the simple UML components, this EC2 server is now using the MDG or the custom stereotype that I have defined. So the look and feel is inherited from the icon set, but the details or the kind of information that I want to capture is driven by the custom MDG that we have defined based on what we need as an output. So this is what I mean when I say we need to effectively combine the icons into an architecture profile. That kind of meets our final modeling goals as well. So this is a flashy, good-looking icon set, which is the Visio world, and the actual profile, which is the intent of doing an architecture model in EA. Combined together is what makes it extremely useful. So we get the best of visualizations and the details that we ought to do in an EA model. So combining these two is what I'm referring to, and even that thing. So instead of letting people do it on their own, so if I am going to expect people to say, "Hey, create a EC2 server," and then go find the T3 instance or image library from your project browser, then go back to your diagram and apply. So I can say, this is how you have to do it, but this is going to be extremely hard or a lot of laborious work for people to do. So I have created an EC2 instance from my toolbox and then converted into an AWS T3 image, which has the details, but which also has my the look and feel that I intend. But what we do is we design these once and then make them as a template. So we have this EA on cloud, the EA and ProLaborate, and the applications on cloud. So these are different deployments that we do on a day-to-day basis. So the client's requirements would fall in one of these buckets, as so EA on cloud, ProLaborate on cloud, or a PaaS offering or a SaaS offering. So I'm just giving you an example. So I'm relating to whatever we do on a day in, day out basis and how we are using EA to model this. So these are 4 different deployments that we do. And to do this, what we have done is modeled it once, and then if I want to create them for a new client or a new deployment, all I need to do is I say apply a model pattern. And when I say apply a model pattern with my with our the organization specific profile enable, you will have these as the patterns, predefined patterns available for you to use. So here I have the EA ProLaborate AppStream on cloud, or the ProLaborate on cloud, or EA on cloud. So different deployments that my team would do on a day in, day out basis. And all I need to do is, if I want to create this into my model for a new client, I just say go add this. And what EA will do, again, I'm sorry, I had some open diagrams, so it's saying please save the diagrams. But once I save the diagrams, it goes and creates this pattern. Now this pattern is unique because this is not just images like we saw in the first place. Neither is it just a set of technical diagrams that we usually see from a UML deployment diagram. So this is a combination of the icon sets, which gives us the flashy, good-looking diagrams, at the same time the technical adeptness that we need to model it something as close to a real-time deployment. So this the reason I included the automation aspect to my presentation is to show that these are the models that we use to generate an Excel spreadsheet out of this, which is used by my cloud team in their Terraform scripts to run the deployment. So this is something that we are having it working. So it's not some like a theoretical or a hypothetical proposition. This is something that we have had working. So these are the steps that we need to take into account to enable this. So I just created a EA ProLaborate on cloud diagram. So let me say this is for a new client deployment. And as you could see, this has all the components that I want. As there's this cloud representations, the regions, the availability zones, the VPCs, public subnets, private subnets, the EC2 servers, applications. But what you will also notice is these are not the simple UML components or nodes. Each one of these has the specific attributes that I wanted or I intended to have. If I click on EC2 servers, you could see that it has the alarms and the node types and usages and references to security groups and things like that. So this now combines the power of my MDG or my custom profile and the EA's icon set to create some standardized deployment patterns that our teams use on a day in day out basis to create their deployment models. Now, with that said, with the first three steps in place, now comes the next challenge. For this deployment diagram to resonate with the real-time picture, what we need is inputs from my BAs who talk to the clients to understand, what kind of security considerations goes into it, what kind of performance considerations, backup considerations, whitelisting, all these things that my BAs give to our team based on the requirements set by the clients. We need those details to be captured. Secondly, we need the inputs from the cloud team, the deployment team, the actual the cloud team, who will convert these business requirements into an actual consideration, like what kind of node is it, a T3 node or a M3 node, what kind of node do we need to meet those performance and security considerations. So we need to collect all these details in order to make my model complete. So this is just still a diagram in my perspective. Though it has all the attributes in it, it's still a diagram. And in the past, we have seen people at this stage reverting back to Excel. They will create an Excel spreadsheet, send it out to these teams to fill out those details and say, kind of receive them. But with the advent of, these Spark systems architecture suite, where, we have the different tools for different teams, you don't have to revert back to these conventional approaches. So now everything that we model in EA are instantly available in the curated platform such as ProLaborate, which can be then used by the wider community, or the verification team, or the cloud team, or the BA team, to kind of add and update the information in a very simplified manner. So instead of sorry so instead of going to an Excel spreadsheet to provide us the information, they could just view the same diagram in a web browser and give us the required details. So I'm just switching to ProLaborate now. From EA, I'm now switching to ProLaborate, and I've logged in as Andy, who is one of the cloud architects. So I mean, hypothetically, that's the role he plays in this demo. And if he goes to his diagrams, and this ProLaborate model is connected to the actual database that I'm working on. So if I just go into this and look at the set of diagrams that he, like Dave, is seeing now, you could see that this new client deployment diagram that I just added in my EA model is now visible in his palette. He would only have a very limited set of diagrams that he is looking at. That's where ProLaborate comes into picture. Instead of showing my verification team or my cloud team, who are oblivious of the nuances of an EA architecture repository, all they need is those small set of diagrams that they have to look or provide inputs. So here, this my diagrams for Andy just shows the diagrams that are relevant to him, and then he sees there's a new client deployment that is being created using EA, obviously using EA, but then this would require his inputs. So I have this option to invite collaborators in ProLaborate, which will send them an email to say, hey, there's a new diagram being added and we need your inputs. And it's only that person, Dave, who could give us these inputs and none other. And instead of asking him to go to an Excel spreadsheet and give us those inputs, what we are doing now is, you could see ProLaborate will enable a very simplified form. It's not like the detailed window, the properties dialog that we see in EA. This is a simplified form that only has the set of attributes that we want him to give us inputs on. Instead of giving him an Excel spreadsheet, we are actually giving something more real time and more user friendly as well. So in this, he could say, what kind of terminate production, true or false. Is it T2, T3 enabled or disabled? Or even if he wants to assign a security group or alarm to it, he could just say, so there is this EC2 security group, which is a tagged value in EA, which is shown like this. And he could just say, add from the list of security groups, which security group is assigned to this. So I'm just saying I want to have this EC2 SG security group, and that gets added immediately. And similarly, I can set alarms, and all the properties that I would expect him to give me inputs on can be done through ProLaborate, and she saves it. The moment they save it, and if I go back to my EA model and take a look at this new client deployment diagram, now take a look at this EC2 server, which is where I wanted his inputs, you'd see all those details would be automatically modeled here or captured here. So this is like, creating a diagram using EA and then immediately socializing that to the cloud team or the verification team or the BA teams who need to give me inputs on each of this, and then take them and kind of make this model complete. So we have done three things. One, use the image library, defined a custom MDG, and thirdly, we are now created a pattern and also collecting information from the wider team. So these are the three different steps in our day-to-day routine to complete a cloud model. And then apparently the architect has to sit and make sure that all the aspects that he or she wanted is there, and make sure it kind of complies with all their principles and requirements. And once they are done, they could even involve the verification team in a similar way, like, instead of having someone to have edit permission, like they've had an edit permission to kind of give us the inputs. We can also have read-only users who just participate as reviewers to give us the inputs or a comment or a feedback on the diagrams that we create. So we are not just creating these diagrams in isolation in some remote repository. Rather, we are inviting people to take a look at this. So you could see this is a verification team person. A verification person need not update this. It's not their scope to update it, but they can see that, hey, there is a EC2 group, and this is the EC2 group that has been modeled. If I want to look at its details, I can even click and see. So we are using the EAs, ref goods, and other tagged values, but in a more interactive, user-friendly way, so that anyone could take a look at it and understand. And even if they have a comment to be made, they could just start a new discussion on that particular element, on that particular diagram, and everyone who is involved in this are quickly notified and they can update it. So this whole process is what makes our modeling exercise a success. Like, when I say we are using this day in day out, we are using all these aspects in this suite, not just a diagram or not just an MDG. So this is this combined approach that's making it kind of very well suitable for someone like us who do at least 2-3 deployments a day, maintenance and all those things, and we are still able to use the model driven approach so seamlessly. And it's work, like, it's kind of working in a perfect near perfect manner. So that's what I've tried to incorporate in my demo. So once the model is created, the people are invited, given inputs and verified and all those things, this model will eventually become complete with all the details that I want for a subnet, what kind of profile, what kind of subnet type, and even if I want to dive deeper, if I want to create so if I go to the supporting elements, every single item here is taken with the utmost attention. So if I want to create a security group, for example, the security group would immediately show that I need to have rules, inbound rules and outbound rules, and then I configure inbound rules and outbound rules. And then these inbound rules will have what is the input protocol, output protocol. It's kind of so granular that the details, if captured right in this model, will almost work seamlessly in a deployment, like for a deployment. So what we do in our case is we take this model and we kind of convert it into an Excel spreadsheet. So obviously at this point we are still relying on Excel spreadsheet. We haven't incorporated the automation from EA model yet. We are working with the cloud team who use Terraform to deploy this. And what they need is an input, an Excel spreadsheet with all these details. And when we look at what they do, they get the Excel spreadsheet with all these details. So let me even take the Excel spreadsheet for a moment, to show what kind of inputs we give to the uh, we give to them. So I'm just opening this file.csv. So this it's a simple name value pair, but at the end of the day, this gives all the details that my cloud team would want for my VPCs, for my subnets, for my availability zones, for my EC2 servers, and it gives all the values out of the model. So it's rendered from the model just through an Excel. We have built a custom Excel rendering to, to kind of get these and render them out. Sorry. Okay, so this Excel spreadsheet is what my cloud team uses as the input to run their scripts. So in their directory, we will create a couple of files in respective folders, which has this Excel, and they have their scripts. So they would have their, so for the VPCs, for example, they would have their scripts, which are kind of so if I look at their main script, which is expected to create the VPCs, you could see that these fields are mapped to the Excels that we are exporting. So we are having the region name, the subnet details, the availability zone details, all of them exported from a EA model to the Excel, and that's what they have configured in their automation script. And with that in place, I mean, this is just to show that every single aspect is mapped to that Excel spreadsheet. So there's no hard coded value. It's all dynamic. And as I update my model, it kind of takes them into consideration while deploying this. And with all this in place, what our cloud team does is then, use the Terraform initialization and, plan and execute to really create these cloud instances. And of course, I need to be to give a realistic picture. Yes, our cloud team are doing a little bit of updates in the Excels to kind of make it 100%, but because every single deployment changes in terms of the considerations or the security considerations or performance considerations, so that variations are still, we are updating the model, updating the Excels. So there will be some manual work that these people will inevitably do, but for the most intensive purposes, we have automated from model to this execution. And when this completes, we would have a prod or a test or a dev environment as per my model, created in the actual AWS instance that we have provisioned for them. So that's the whole journey. So just to summarize this, we started with looking at the icon sets, which give us this great looking diagrams, and then we went for a bit further to define a profile. So I kind of established a need for having a custom profile to do this architecture model, because it's not just a diagram that we're talking about. And then we have the patterns, which combines these two and puts it into something that's reusable. And then how do we build and share and get inputs from the wider teams and make it complete? And then we also saw how that is used for deployment. And what is that we are now working on? So this, again, for most of our architecture modeling, like where people are especially moving to a cloud related deployments or cloud transformation cases where I'm working, it's always this kind of considerations that are taken in the design time and the deployments, and someone in between sits and draws a Visio diagram to represent it. And we have worked with a number of teams to do the EA based models, so that it's kind of very well aligned with the rest of the architecture stack that I'm creating as well. But there's one thing that we are working on, which is an R&D that's happening in our side, is to do the other way around, to connect to a live AWS instance and reverse engineer a model like this. That's something that has been asked repeatedly, and that's something that we are doing. We're working as an R&D, but I'm unfortunately not in a position to showcase anything at the moment. But in a gist, at least for a model-driven cloud architecture deployment, or getting something that is as close to deployment, this approach should work. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share in this. And you can reach out to us if you want to know more about how the teams who are involved in this cloud transformation are using EA and ProLaborate to model it, or even if you want to manage your infrastructure in cloud through these expert teams, in whatever ways we can assist you further, you please feel free to reach out to us in prolaborate@sparksystems.com or visit our website at prolaborate.sparksystems.com.
Thanks, Nizam. It's a great presentation, and there's lots of feedback saying how powerful and engaging it is. There's one question I'll just start off with and I'll field. Someone says they have Enterprise Architect 13, and are these icon libraries available? So the short answer is no, but if you have Enterprise Architect 15.2, which has been released recently, there is a full and updated implementation of Google Icon Library and the AWS library and Azure. So if you have the latest version of Enterprise Architect, then you have access to all of these icons. There's also a question, I'm just trying to see the individual's name, that was talking about the copyright and the royalties. Obviously, Google and AWS wants you to model and deploy and design cloud-based architectures, and so they've made those icons available, and they ship with Enterprise Architect, and they're all available, so you don't have to pay royalties for them, and you can include them in reports and in documentation. So that's good. Just a couple of questions, Nizam. At one stage you had ProLaborate up, and just wanted to ask the question, is it possible to tailor those forms so that you can only allow people to enter certain sorts of information or certain types of information?
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's a great question. And yes, that's exactly, I mean, that's one of the main use cases for which ProLaborate was built. So, what it automatically enables is it reads the MDG. So let's take the EC2 server as an example. It reads the MDG and brings all the tagged values that we have defined in that MDG. Okay, and this is automatically added to the form. However, I can say, two things. One, I can just remove a couple of them. So let's say I don't want people to even model this. I can remove them from my form. So I can just show a limited set of details to my users. So I can have different forms for different users. So it kind of will show only these details. And if you want to customize this form, all the other tagged values are available for you here, and all you need to do is to just drag and drop onto this form. Furthermore, let's say I am giving this to a team who is security architects in my group, and I want them to only update the security group and its details and don't want them to touch my alarms or my IP addresses or my, the TT type. So I can decide which field is editable as well. So if I do this and save, so let me just say I'm doing it for my default profile now. And if I go back to the same diagram that we saw previously, which showed all the properties for a person with write access, it was allowing me to edit almost anything. But now what it will show me is, you could see that alarms is a read-only field. The T3 type, the EC2 server AMI is a read-only field. So it only shows those fields that I have left as read and write to be editable, and it doesn't even show all the other attributes. So it's highly customizable, and it can be tailored to a specific user group. So the same, but however, all this gets updated to the same EA model. So, we are not creating a duplicate version or anything like that. It's the same model, but just scattering it in a different way for different audience.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic that not only can you fully tailor the forms, but you can make some bits so that they're read-only, so people can't change things that you don't want changed, such as an IP address, but things where you do want feedback and you do want updates, you can tailor that to suit your individual needs. So that's great. There was a question from Stephen that says it's presentation being recorded. So yes, it's being recorded and will be made available on the Sparx Systems YouTube site. And that usually happens quickly, and then it takes a little bit longer for the Q&A to get created and updated, and then we'll make that available on the Sparx Systems website. So the next thing, there was a part earlier on in the presentation where you had some checkboxes. So it says, are the MDGs for the AWS, Google, and Azure icons installed by default? And how do you make them available in Enterprise Architect?
Sure, that's a good question. So in EA, to enable an MDG or disable an MDG, we go to specialize, and then we go manage tech. So you could see that, this is again my usual recommendation to every EA user that I come across is just enable the ones that you want rather than enabling everything. Okay, that's a tangential thing, but in here is where you see the AWS, the Google, somewhere here, the Google Cloud Platform, and the Microsoft Azure. So these are the three MDGs that I need to have activated or enabled for me to be able to just go use these image libraries or import from the pattern. So once I have them enabled, this is again, I'm just filtering to make it easy for us to view, but you'll have the entire set of AWS, Google, and the Azure libraries here.
Yeah, so they're all installed by default, and you just have to enable them, and that's good. Now, the one, the 6FS MDG that you had listed, people asked about that availability for that particular MDG.
So it's I wouldn't have a, I mean, I can talk to the team and make it available to the public, but yeah, I'll try to make it available for the public. It's something that we build for our internal use, but I would like to explain, or maybe what I'll do, if you are interested, please reach out to us in an email, because I need to add some caveats around it, because it's been built on a custom meta model that we define. So it's not just uh, a, a common one size fits all sort of thing. Happy to share, but with a little bit of background on how it has been built, or what you need to do to evolve it or to update it.
Yeah. And just a point which might be obvious to us, but when you make changes to the Enterprise Architect model, can you just mention whether those changes are then available live via the web
Yes,
link?
the ProLaborate viewer. Yes, the
Yes.
thing is, I just created this new client deployment in this demo. So I used the patterns to create this, and then maybe even just to prove it again. So I just make some changes in this diagram, and you could see the model was created right now, and it was already available in ProLaborate. And then now I just made a small change in the diagram, and it's already updated in my ProLaborate viewer as well. So it's a real-time live view of your diagram, and vice versa. So if any change happens in the in this form using ProLaborate, so if I'm setting the environment to prod and saving it, the next second it will be updated in my EA model as well.
And
So
what
you'll see,
advantages does your approach that you've shown here today using Enterprise Architect, ProLaborate, and ProCloud Server offer over, say, a diagramming tool such as Visio? How is this much, much better? And I know it is, but
no, it's a good question, and
why so much better?
it's a good question. So yes, the Visios are, if anyone asks me what's your competitor, I'll just say Word, Excel, and Visios, because that's where people migrate from. But Visio will give you the look and feel like this. It may even have a slightly better flashy images that you people just use out of their creativity. But what will be missing is the ability to have this the metadata that we need to capture along with it, the ability to reuse regions, the ability to kind of reuse these security groups. All these model, reuse, and visualize. All these three things together is what makes an architecture complete. So Visio, we can create diagrams. We can't do an architecture. People do refer to a Visio diagram as an architecture. That's a misnomer, but it's a diagram. Here we are talking about architecture. So you could see that, there are each of the regions that we are working on always there. So let's say I have a node in Ohio and I have another deployment that is expected to go in Ohio. I'm not going to go create a fresh VPC, a fresh EC2 server, a fresh RDS. I could even consider adding a new application to an existing EC2 server. If I'm using a Visio diagram, it's just a box and a line. Like, visually maybe it will say it's Ohio or whatever, but that doesn't add up to anything. But in EA, when we do an architecture tool, we are talking about all these reusability. It's a digital equivalent of the real-time representation with all the details in it as well. So that's what makes this whole solution unique.
Fantastic. So I might just wrap up there. I'll just make myself presenter and just finish up. So I'd like to thank Nizam for the excellent presentation and showcasing Enterprise Architect. It's great to see all of the cloud architecture being modeled in EA, being made instantly available via the ProCloud server, and the flexibility that ProLaborate offers in then engaging with those teams. We've got a number of upcoming webinars. We've got another part of our BA EA for BA series coming up shortly. We also have a webinar on Archimate. We have the BBC, so Building Business Capability virtual event coming up. As always, if you have any suggestions, please send them through to webinar@sparxsystems.com. It was great to see so many people online, so thank you very much for your time. And don't forget, you can visit sparxsystems.com/webinars if you want to view any of our previous webinars. They're all available for free. And if you do a Google search for Sparx Systems YouTube, we also have our YouTube site with lots and lots of videos, webinars from our virtual conference that we had earlier this year, lots of our previous webinars, and some short videos on how to use Enterprise Architect, how to use ProLaborate, and how to use ProCloud Server. So we encourage you to check those out. So once again, take care of one another, look after yourself, be safe. Thanks for joining us today. Lovely to see you all online, and look forward to seeing you at an upcoming webinar. That's it from me, Scott, and thanks Nizam for a fantastic and very thorough presentation. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott, and thanks everyone for joining. It was a pleasure to have you all. Thanks.